Welcome to Unpacked, the podcast that examines how technology is reshaping business and our world, with this season unpacking the topic of generative AI. My name's Stuart Black and I'm joined by the voice of the show, Think Tank's innovation lead, Arvind Ravichandler. Arvind, are you well?
Hey Stuart, doing awesome. We haven't spoken in a couple of weeks.
It's been a while.
I've missed our conversations.
How have you been? What have you been filling your time with?
So, it's interesting. I was in Australia last couple of weeks, working with a client on topics very relevant to what we're talking about today, helping a client think through how AI will transform not just their company, but the entire industry that they're working in. So the kind of questions that I'm getting from clients are pretty interesting. I have to say I'm enjoying myself.
Sounds great. And did you manage to get out and see the beaches in Australia?
Not as much as I would have liked to. It's too bad.
Hard
Second trip.
Hard to do business on the beach.
Exactly. Speaking of beaches, where are you? I miss your traditional background.
Yeah, today I'm in a different, let's call it a different studio, but still in London and very far from the beach, I'm afraid. It's quite cold at the moment. But we will persevere. So in a few moments, we're going to have Arvind's deep dive interview with Omid Bakhshandeh, who's a co-founder at Vernique and an AI scientist. So Arvind, could you just introduce that one a little bit for us?
Yeah, the reason I'm so excited about this conversation, Stuart, is because Omid brings real-world experience of having built AI products and taken them to the market. So as business leaders try to do this, in this conversation, we're going to unpack some of those elements of real-world practical implications of what you need to consider when you build AI. So it's going to be a really riveting conversation with a lot of real deep practical insights.
I expect nothing less. But before that, let's take a look at a couple of things happening in the AI space at the moment. Our first story that we're covering today concerns OpenAI launching a ChatGPT app for Apple's Vision Pro augmented reality headsets. This is quite exciting. The app offers an immersive experience where users can interact with AI through voice, images, and text within their field of vision. It means moving away from typing into a device towards interacting with an AI assistant app by speaking or even feeding images to it by looking at things in the real world. One example in the article is about getting help in the kitchen, where you can put your ingredients out on the table and ask the assistant to come up with a recipe that will involve all of those bits and pieces. Arvind, what does this sound like to you? Is it the start of things to come?
I think so, Stuart. In fact, I think that this combination may be one of the most disruptive interface trends in computing that we're going to see, right? And the reason I believe that is because what AI is going to bring to the table is a completely new way of interfacing with traditional computers and machines, right? Because what you traditionally would look at in a website, you use a keyboard, you go into a website, you search, you navigate a website, you look at products, you look at information. What AI brings to the table is a completely new way of thinking about websites. You no more need a keyboard or a mouse. You can actually talk to AI and say, hey, I'm interested in a new pair of jeans. Can you show me what's in the market, right? And the AI interface could possibly go look at all the different vendors, different prices, and really put together an instant website for you or a visual for the different pairs of jeans available in the market. So the way we consume information on the internet is going to completely change. Now, when you pair this with the idea of the Vision Pro, a Vision Pro is nothing but a completely immersive screen, right? That's what it is. And it's voice and it's gesture based. So you can imagine sitting back in your living room couch and telling Vision Pro that you're interested in shopping today for jeans. Mm-hmm. And it brings up, with the help of ChatGPT, Vision Pro throws out new images for you on what those jeans are. Or now imagine bringing it into the real world, right? with a computer, you're still interfacing in the digital world. With Vision Pro, you now bring it into the real world where you're sitting in your living room and let's say you and your wife are having a conversation on what couch to buy. Both of you are looking at Vision Pro, both of you are looking at the real world, your home in your environment. And now you ask ChatGPT the question of, hey, show me 15 leather couches that are possibly a good match in my living room. It has real immersive feedback on what your living room looks like, and it could possibly show you how that couch looks in your living room. And not only show you how the couch looks in your living room in real time, it may be able to bring up prices, the materials. You can customize it. You can say, hey, I don't want black, I want blue. And then you can say, who has blue? And man, the potential is limitless, right? Sorry. I was trying to give you a brief answer, but I think my excitement overran everything. But yeah, I'm just giving you examples of how this could change the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to quickly comment though that the way ChatGPT is interfacing today with Vision Pro is very rudimentary. All they've done is taken the ChatGPT app and put it into Vision Pro, right? But I think that's just a start, and you shouldn't limit yourself based on what you're reading on the news and those images. You really need to think beyond what this could possibly do, and I think the potential is endless.
Very exciting. And the headset looks cool. I'm not sure how long I would want to wear one for. I think this may be the challenge in reducing it down to the point where maybe that's just a pair of contact lenses we've got, but maybe that's a few years yet to come.
No, I think you're right. There are some real world challenges. How long would you wear the headset? The headset is priced at $3,500 today. Is it a consumer device? Who can afford it? Are consumers even the right audience for it? There's a lot of questions to be answered. But theoretically, you can see the potential of AI plus virtual reality changing your experiences tremendously.
Absolutely. And our second story today is also about a consumer product. This one is an AI-powered clock that can turn each minute into a poem. So the idea here is to use artificial intelligence in a fun way to make telling the time in some ways a bit fresher. So one example of these poems that I've seen is for 9:41, where the clock on this occasion displayed the following words: with steam that rises, a cup so fine, 9:41, it's coffee time. I'm not sure whether it's going to win a Nobel Prize, but it's fun. The clock is called Poem /1 and is priced at $150 on Kickstarter. Arvind, I hear you laughing. Would you buy one?
Stuart, I think I'm the wrong audience for this question. I'm not paying $150 for a clock that's going to read out poems for me. But I think it's creative, it's interesting. I'm sure there's an audience out there for it somewhere.
But let me ask you this then. The makers of this product claim it represents a new approach to IoT, embedding AI in discrete objects rather than creating a network of interconnected devices. So how does this approach shift the narrative around IoT?
Yeah, I think that's the broader question, Stuart. And I think this integrating AI into the clock is just the beginning. I think we're going to see AI integrated into most IoT-based devices. Either it could be at the edge, at the device, or it could be back-end in the cloud. Depending on how big the device is, the cost, etc., it could vary. But there is no doubt in my mind that AI will be integrated into everything IoT, and not only integrated into everything IoT, but I think it'll accelerate the adoption of the Internet of Things, because now you have a way of deriving real-time insights. And a lot of these smart devices that people have been talking about, the ability of devices to interface with each other, ability of devices to make decisions, all of that will become very real. And in fact, this is a topic called AIoT. That's the word for it these days. It's the integration of artificial intelligence and IoT. And I think it's a real trend.
Exciting stuff. We're going to take a quick break here and then come back with Arvind's interview with Omid Bakhshandeh. Our think tank focuses on researching emerging technologies that will shape your future. From generative AI to exoskeletons, we study the impact these technologies will have on business, humanity, and our planet. And through our podcast, newsletters, and social media content, we have a direct line to a truly global emerging technology community. So if you'd like to find out more about the impact these technologies will have on your business, then reach out to our team at lab45thinktank.com.
Whether you're the CEO of the company or if you are leading a business unit, if you're asking yourself the question of, should I develop an AI strategy? That's the wrong question to ask. Because today we know that if you don't have an AI strategy, the odds of you being successful in the next couple of years is going to diminish. So the right question to ask is, what is my AI strategy and how fast can I deploy the strategy? To answer this question, at the heart of every company's AI strategy are large language models. In a previous episode with Professor Anum Datta, we unpacked LLMs and gave you a 101 on what LLMs are. Today, I have a really interesting guest with whom I'm going to take that conversation to the next level, where we're going to talk about the key things you need to know about LLMs that'll help you develop your company's AI strategy. I'm really excited about our guest today. He got his PhD in artificial intelligence, specifically focused on natural language processing from University of Rochester. He's worked with many well-known research institutions and government bodies on the area of artificial intelligence. And currently, he's the co-founder of Vernique, a company that is specializing in building AI that is customized for different domains. Welcome, Omid.
Thank you for having me.
So, Omid, let me start with, I always like to start with understanding your personal journey, right? I think it's always interesting for us to know AI is a different topic, right? Artificial intelligence is a different topic compared to other topics. What drew you to this field of AI? What was your personal journey here?
Um, so my personal journey starts from high school, believe it or not, when I was competing in this robotic competition. So first time ever I saw like a concept of robot, I was mesmerized by like this concept that you can build something that can do things that you're not is like more than what you can imagine, right? The possibilities are endless. We've seen every sci-fi movie. The main thing is a robot with an AI kind of running around. So that was like very appealing to me. So I ended up competing in this international competition around robotics, and we did well. We got like first place in the world, and for a couple of years, and ended up kind of learning more about general concept of AI. That like what are the like components of this kind of AI? Like, what does it mean to have an AI? In robotics, it's very interesting because like you end up working with different parts of AI, like computer vision, like expert systems in terms of like decision making, you like sensory inputs and all those stuff, and then there are parts that you work with like natural language processing, like processing language as well. So it was a very good like introduction to like these different parts. So from that, I knew that I want to do that.
Lovely, Omid. What an interesting story. Um, so, as you were drawn into this field of robotics and as you learned about NLU and natural language processing, um, today these LLMs, large language models, they're sort of the heart of everybody's AI strategy, right? So, as people look at LLMs and focus on LLMs, what should they keep in mind, high level, Omid, in terms of key factors of consideration in their AI strategy as it pertains to LLMs?
Language models, generally speaking, are very basic thing by themselves. Like what they do is like very simple thing. guess the next word. And then large language model that like what we call the LLMs are just huge language models. Now instead of having like something around like 2,000 or 20,000 parameters, now you are in billions, like in hundreds of billions sometimes of parameters. And the reason that they are important is that we saw a kind of a point in the last couple of years that these LLMs get to a point of capturing a lot of knowledge. So knowledge was one of the biggest problem in NLP, to how to integrate knowledge and a natural language processing system. So these two things were very hard to kind of combine at the time. Actually, my co-founder and I have a benchmark that the GPT paper basically uh, cites as GPT-1 and 2, cites as a like one of the main benchmark they test GPT on. And we could see like from like a couple of years ago that the number when we started was like when Nasrin started the benchmark, we continued working on it together. It was like 55% accuracy, then 60%, and it was like stalled for like for a while. And then with GPT-3 and like 2 and 3, it was just getting better and better. And this was getting to like 80, 90 something percent. So you could see like all of a sudden on some knowledge benchmark, like just a simple same language model that like does this, like basically does the next word prediction, is all of a sudden capable of doing a lot more. So what it means basically is that you have a very interesting system now that can capture knowledge very well, and it already comes with a pre-trained, like depending on what you use, what LLM you use, comes with this knowledge of whatever is being trained on as something inside the parameters and inside the model itself. Whenever the word knowledge comes up, then it's like this can become interesting because then you have a tool that can interact with that very well.
This is great. So there's a second concept here, right, Omid, our audience should know of, that when these LLMs capture this knowledge and these large language models, they've led to this concept of a foundational model, right, where you don't have to retrain an LLM from scratch. You can take existing LLMs in the market because they have captured the knowledge and start deploying them. So, can you talk a little bit about what is a foundation model? Why is that different from how AI was approached in the past?
So when we were doing kind of machine learning, let's say 5 years ago, which is not that many years ago, but it feels like a century ago now. You would like kind of you have a data set like in the supervised task. Let's say you want to do a sentiment analysis. That hey, does this sentence have a positive sentiment or negative sentiment? The way that you would end up like building that model 5 years ago was that you would start basically from a data set of sentences that have annotation of this is a positive sentence and that's a negative sentence. Like someone says positive, this is a good stock, and the other one says like Microsoft stock is not good, like this is a negative sentiment, right? And then you would basically collect that data somehow, and then it becomes like a probably like 10,000, like a very good data set would be like 40,000 pair of like this, and you would train it from scratch. You build that model from scratch. So your input would have been character from scratch, and then you build this weight from scratch. Something that like changed was this idea of multitask learning that kind of get into the whole system of like, can we learn multiple objectives at the same time? And that basically that became really really interesting when we got to deeper and deeper models, because it looked like you can a model that is deep enough in a deep learning kind of fashion in a deep neural net, if designed correctly, can learn like multiple tasks at the same time. And then this became even more interesting because then you had these language models. Like a first one started from that came out was BERT, basically from Google. And when what they did is that they kind of like trained it on one other task, like which was the language modeling task, like a what is the next word, basically kind of a task. And then they used the same weight that it was trained on this kind of thing, and they brought it that data from, for example, sentiment analysis, and say now let's use this weight as a base. Instead of starting from zero, let's start from these weights, and then go ahead and like train this model, which they call it now fine tuning. Basically, that's the concept. So they fine tune it. What it means that we don't start from scratch, we start from these weights that exist. And what they saw was that, oh, with very less amount of examples, you can very fast get to the result. And why was that? The reason was like, when you start from zero, you have to learn everything about language, right? Like you have to learn about negation, you have to learn about prepositions, you have to learn about this. So with 10,000 examples, you had to learn everything, including sentiment. So it was a harder task to do. Now these models, because they have already know a lot about language, a lot of knowledge is already into them, right? Because of they have been were kind of trained that way, they could kind of learn this task very well. So then the kind of community and little marketing here and there, they call them a foundation model.
So these foundation models give you a base on which to start off, where you don't have to spend years training your own model. And Omid, but in this, there are some nuances, right? So let's unpack that a little bit. I think we are getting to the first key question in any company's AI strategy, which is, should they train and build their own foundation models, or should they leverage existing foundation models, right? How should an enterprise leader decide if they should train their own models or they should use existing models?
Absolutely. So the rule of thumb for me is 95% of companies, they don't need to do that. Or 95% of use cases, they don't need a LLM from scratch or a new LLM at all. But there are like another 5%. So I think given like probability laws, like we start from that 5% and everyone else can figure out that they don't need it. So the use cases of that 5% that you need a specialized LLM. Like if you are working, for example, in let's say in genetics, right, research, or you medical research, so you need an LLM that kind of is more fine tuned on, or the base model is like has seen a lot of specific medical languages, like, and this is something that Microsoft and Google and a lot of companies now are coming up with, like this basically medical LLMs. So their base is on like PubMed articles and things like that. So they have read a lot of popular PubMed articles and things like that. So they are a little bit, they will be better to, for example, if you're doing sentiment analysis for medical, to start from that, because probably they have been kind of fine tuned more towards that kind of a knowledge, because it can get very, very specific. The other side of the equation is like, you can definitely get like a very good results if you have unbelievable amount of data that you can base off your like a existing LLM, or like a on top of that, and then start from that LLM and build
Got it.
your application
Got
on
it.
top of. For example, banking, right? Let's say you are a 100-year-old bank and you have gone through the digitization, hopefully by now, and you have everything in like a digital format, and then you have so many legal documents around incredibly complex, like a um financial transactions that are very different from anything else. There are like specific insurance things and all of that, right? And then you have so much of it, like you have terabytes of that data, and they're really unique and they're really interesting. Then there is a way that you can think about, like, okay, I have a lot of data, I can get better result if I can have a LLM that is kind of fine tuned to this data, and then I can base every application on top of this, my own foundation model. But I'm just cherry picking these kind of couple of examples to just say that's 5% of use cases. 95% of use cases, you would not want to go through that, because it would, first of all, cost a lot of money, and to build this LLM or even fine tune them. Second of all, it would be a very challenging even to pursue that. The best now, we work with a lot of companies and enterprises that we talk to them. A lot of them, they need to get a lot of GPUs and the availabilities are not there. So like it delays you to get to put your basically foot into the door, so and get into the kind of the your AI strategy. So you should never kind of wait for that as a prerequisite to start your AI strategy. I would definitely recommend to go through towards using if you're using an LLM in your use case, you should definitely use something that exists out there. Even you want to fine tune, you can fine tune it a little bit and get your applications going. And then in future, you can think about like, okay, now I have all this data. Let me just do something to make my accuracy like 10%, whatever,
Moment, I think
5%.
you hit upon a great point here. Every company today should start using existing LLMs on their applications, right? Because the trade-off is if you don't leverage existing LLMs, you're going to lose time to market, which is what you brought up, speed, right? 5% of the companies, when they have unique, large volumes of custom data, they can actually think of also building their own foundation models and specific LLMs because they can deploy that into their own industries and also monetize it, right? So let's start with the assumption, Omid, that I'm going to leverage an existing large language model as a foundation model and I'm going to build on top of that. Um, what are some things I need to consider when I do that? How do I pick my model?
And generally speaking, I would say um, I would not recommend for a lot of companies to get into this directly. So I would recommend them to kind of use a third party company to kind of help them to get into this kind of places. But let me put it this way: like you would not never go and build like a cloud, from scratch, right? Like if you go use a cloud provider, you use their database, you use their the Kafka that is sitting up there and use their messaging. You use all these technologies to build something. And in AI, I would say it's kind of the same. Like find the tools that are like sit like a level on top of these kind of structures, and teams that are very specialized in this. They understand the technology and how fast pace is moving, and they can basically make sure that you're up to date. So you don't want to pick something right now and then a year from now, like you cannot change it yourself because you picked it and you built something and it becomes like a stale in your company. So it's very good to kind of use a third party or a company that like can help you go through this. But if you wanted to go through this path yourself, if you decide like, hey, I wanted to kind of start using LLMs in my own company and I have a specific use case that I wanted to use it for. So then you will end up in two different categories. The category number one is that you're going to end up using a third party API LLMs, basically OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, and there are a bunch of other startups that have LLMs as a service. So you will end up there. That's one category that you can kind of use. That's the category that is the most, I guess, popular among everyone. OpenAI has captured a lot of market there. And the second category is going to be you use an open source model and then you start kind of building on top of your open source model yourself. And now the main thing between the main difference between these two is going to be basically, do you want to maintain the language model yourself? Do you want it to kind of make sure that you have the life cycle of that? You have to launch it on a GPU. Can you do that? Do you understand? Do you have the expertise of like what is an inference service and how to do kind of fast inference, like all those things that comes with it, like which we can talk more. Or do you rather to just use an API call to some third party and get the results back? And it's of course different in price, different in quality, difference in everything comes down to like your decision making will end up there. Do you have private data that you don't want to share with OpenAI? Do you want to make sure your data is going to sit inside your own basically firewall? Like all of these kind of questions are going to be very important to make a decision on how to navigate this basically LLM
So
side.
Omid, that aspect, right? Let's dive into it to one more degree. So once I decide that I'm going to use leverage LLMs and build on top of them, then the next step is, should I use open source or should I use a private LLM like GPT or Google's LLM? when I make that first decision of open source versus closed, what are the key things I should keep in mind?
So open source gives you a way more flexibility in what you want to do, especially if you have the expertise of it, like you understand how to work with deep models and like how to use them, and it enables more like more fine-tuned tasks that you can kind of build on top of, for sure, right? You can literally fine-tune a model from scratch. You can split the model in half. Like you can do anything basically after that. You're very open to build tasks and kind of achieve the objectives that you have. That's not necessarily true with like a most of the API based basically LLMs. So if you can figure out your task, you have to look at your task frequency of usage, the size of the usage, how many user, like bulk, like all of that you have to put in consideration. Start thinking about how much the cost is going to be, one versus the other. Also, like all of these things, and then make a decision on that. Like the task, I think, is the most
I think
important
you've
thing.
nailed
That
it.
does it.
You nailed it, Omid. The key thing I'm taking away is that this is when you need to know the use cases you're going after, right? If I'm in bank, I can't. So if I'm in the banking sector, retail sector, these AI-based LLMs, what are the use cases that I'm going to go after? And depending on the use case, you can take a call on whether you want to open source or you want to use it, because some use cases using GPT or a closed source model is better. Other use cases, you may have to build it on your own. Can you give us examples? Like, can you take an industry, pick any industry, banking, retail, healthcare, and can you give us a specific example of a use case where you would leverage an existing LLM versus a use case where you would go with an open source and build on top of that?
Okay, let's assume you are a healthcare provider, and then you have a very like a strict policy around data sharing, and you have data should not leave any server you have on your prem, or it should never leave the firewall. So you have like working in a specific country has like very strict laws, and you want to make sure you're following that. So what it means is that you have to have something on prem. You have to have your server be there, and that like immediately put all the API based system out of the business basically for you. So you have to immediately think about how can I bring something on prem. There are solution Microsoft has on prem solution that you have to go through. Like you can go, hey, I want this
Yeah.
model
Well,
on.
if I can
Yeah.
quickly interrupt, can't I just, isn't it true that I can bring a closed source model from Google or Microsoft and host that instance in my on my premise without giving up my data?
So it's I don't think Google does that. I think Microsoft has advertised that they can do it, but I really don't believe that like like I'm not sure if anyone has done that like successfully yet, like out there like that I know of at
So
least.
you're saying that
But
today, if I'm a customer and if I'm training on top of GPT, all my data is accessible to OpenAI?
oh yeah, by default you can set like as long as I know, I'm not sure exactly about OpenAI, but like, as far as I know is you can put a basically set a flag that they don't capture your data. But like again, I think that's for some businesses that's not enough. So you can have private instances of OpenAI. So you can buy a private instance of like OpenAI or something else, but that is going to be inside like the like Azure or wherever it's running, like as a private instance, right? So you have to navigate that. At the end of the day, that's like another, like, depending on your use case, is another level. And as I said, it's not as available as people think it is, right?
Understood.
It's
So there's a, if I can qualify this a little bit, what I'm hearing is that you can use closed source models and you can have private instances of them in your company and open up data and have data security metrics. It's possible. It's just that you have to decide how sensitive the data is, right? So there's a
yeah.
spectrum, right? Go ahead,
It's a
go ahead, Omid.
a big hedge fund won't like a big hedge fund won't do it, right? Because that's like billions of dollars on, like, if it like they don't want it, like that's why like a lot of hedge funds, they just even their servers is on prem, like they put it in their basement. Like it really depends on the use case. So that's one thing. The other one is the use case that I can think of is like you need a very specialized fine tuning that is a very specialized task, and the fine tuning that some of the services kind of provide is not enough. For example, you want to add another layer on top of a model, like that's a different task. You have a completely different task. You want to add like a neural network on top of the existing language model, and then use that in a different way. Make sure that it's trained all the way through, and like get better result for that. Like that is another use case that you wanted to use probably an open source software instead of doing that. Some other use cases are like your use case is like way easier to do it with like a smaller model, and it's very high frequency. So you don't want it to charge. You get like super expensive to make a call on like a third party basically API. For example, ChatGPT, like GPT-4 is right now an 8K context is like 3 cents per 1K token and 6 cents per output. So it end up to be 9 cents with GPT-4 per like one real call. And what you want to do is that like say, hey, I have something that is high frequency. It's happening like 1,000 times a minute or hour or 15 minutes, whatever it is. And when I do the math, the price is super high. But I can deploy a very smaller model that does the job, even maybe with higher accuracy, and it would cost me $4 an hour. So that's another place for you to think about using this stuff. And the other thing, just generally to speak, and goes to my first point of like most of the time you shouldn't like kind of end up doing it yourself and use a third party basically to help you through this kind of complex stuff is uh, a lot of times the tasks that you want to achieve at the end they are not going to be uh, basically uh, you cannot get really good performance out of them just by using an LLM by itself. You may end up using 10 LLM and like four different models, just like a bare models, and put all of them together to achieve that task, right? So a lot of times, like these are the task themselves becomes very complex, and then you wanted to just use a mixture of both. You say, hey, I use this for this part, and then you have a bunch of 5 models here that they do, let's say, my regressions and like price predictions and all of this, and then I use the price prediction from this model, put it in this thing, and then like if you're building a full solution, right? So then you mix and match up even between them. So it really use case
I
dependent.
love this. And Omid, when I was in, one of my professors in business school, he was also on my podcast, Greg LeBlanc. He used to tell us that if you want to be a powerful strategist in a company, you need to have all functions in mind when you're developing a strategy, right? You have to look at marketing costs, you got to look at product development, engineering. And as you're outlining this, for me, that's coming back to me in that to develop this AI strategy and to make these decisions on should I use open source, closed source, etc., it's a combination of business, technology, marketing, because number one, the things you've told me is it first begins with the use case, right? You need to understand clearly in the next 6 months, what are the key use cases, business use cases, where you want to deploy AI based LLMs. The second one is you also then need to understand your company's data strategy. How secure is your data? How sensitive is your data, right? You also have to understand the frequency at which these you will be calling these APIs and LLMs, which would determine your cost, which is also tied back to the use case, right? The last one is you may land up, depending on the use case, using multiple types of LLMs, not just one, right? So to make this decision, you have to have a cross functional team of people along with you to help you figure out what is the best course of action over the next 6 months for your company or next 1 year. And so this is also where I'm also beginning to see why you're saying that while you're making these decisions, if you already don't have experts in your company, you should rely on third party experts or companies such as Vernique that is specializing in this area, right? It totally makes sense why you would do that. Anything else that the the rest of the market should know as they build and deploy, right? Maybe talk a little bit about reliability and speed to market moment. How fast, if I were to take a closed source LLM or an open source LLM today, and if I'm a leader and I'm trying to develop a product, what should my expectations be? Should my team be able to develop that for me in 3 months, 2 months, 6 months? What is acceptable, in terms of speed and cost?
So something we've seen is that teams are very fast to build demos with these LLMs. Like it's very easy to demo like what it is, but they like something that happens. Like I have seen this maybe like 10 times now in last like 2 months. That like people that start from it, like their team goes to them or they ask, "Hey, I want something with this LLM or AI thing. Can you do something about this use case?" They build a demo and it looks really good. Works a little bit like you can demo it and it's nice, right? And then they think, okay, let's put it to production. And that at that moment, like everything gets stalled. It's like, okay, it just works for the demo, and then the expertise ends in the team, right? That like, okay, how can we get this now from here and take it to something that's scalable with that can support use cases that has a product roadmap. Everyone feels in there like get like they are like deer in the headlight. They don't know what to do because the whole knowledge they have is just like a substance. So that's like what we've seen a lot. So I think it's a very good thing for people that are doing a strategy to do two things. One, become a kind of use case founder. Like find use cases and have an eye. What it means to find a use case. How like what a specific process in my company or for my customers is a process that AI can help. Like if they can have that, like develop that skill first, like, okay, this is a process, AI can help here, AI can help here. Then they can write down all these use cases. Then maybe internally with their team, right? Or using like some third party firms, consulting firms, all of that to come up with demos and like kind of explore this better to see like, okay, so we can do this now. What we just concluded, what are the data that is needed? Where can I find this data from? Who is what is the input? What is the output? What is the frequency? How much does it cost? Like, do that second. And then when they know this, maybe even create a demo that like showcases this so they can sell it internally to the management. But after that, I would recommend to say, okay, now we know what this is. Let's find someone like, or hire or find someone or in the team, allocate a good amount of time internally to, because maybe we have the talent to just build this out as a really right solution. Then goes back to your question that now you have to think about reliability. Now you have to think where it's going to point out, like how fast it can retrieve the newest data. Like all of that becomes like a question, and like the infrastructure even to build this stuff becomes complex. Very yeah.
What should I expect? Is that a 6 month task given the state of infrastructure and support that is building around this AI community? Am I looking at 6 months? Am I looking at a year? What am I looking at, Omid?
So you're looking at like 3 weeks of a demo, like in like 3 weeks or like one basically cycle of development. A couple of developers they can put a demo together, and then you're looking into again, as you know, like we should always like as people that are leading teams understand the capability of our teams. That changes the whole game. Do you know that your team is capable of doing this really good? They have proven themselves before. They can put things then together very fast. But like that changes everything. As you know, that's a alpha factor that puts like you have to multiply to this. But assuming that's one, that number is one, and you're multiplying to the whole system. For something like that, you have to at least put 3 months and like three engineers, right? 3 engineers, 3 months of work, and that's assuming those people have understanding of the challenges out there, right? And they don't, believe me. As an engineer that has been doing, let's say they were like implementing a SAP solution or they were implementing some other solution. Of course, they are super capable of doing this, but they do not, they cannot foresee like all the challenges that come in with this system. And the other thing is that they cannot understand how to iterate for the next version. This is a very fast-paced place, so they have to make sure that it is happening. Then the better idea is to hire. If you wanted to 100%, you are like focus on like doing it internally. Hire a firm like a consultant firm, or hire a team internally, and then make sure they have the real kind of expertise. Put them to the work. Make sure that like they can get into this, and that's going to be their job for next year. So they can look at it as a product roadmap. They can kind of iterate over it. But if you think that some is a function that is not necessarily important in the company very directly, then think about it as like as if you're buying a database or you're buying a cloud. So find the best vendor you can find. Ask them to say, hey, we have a demo here. It looks good, but this is not something that we want to do this in the demo, but these are like all the places it can go wrong, or we don't want to spend time on development of this. I don't want to just sit down and like figure out how to match our users with their content, all personalize them, like all the things that can come into this, like a example that you mentioned. Let me find that. Can you guys like take over this and then do it for us, and I can use this as I'm using a database. So think that way. That makes you go to market way faster with less complexity, and then becomes just like another software function. And your development team internally can be just the interface to those people, ask for features, and run this as a product instead of as a tech. Run it as like is part of my kind of product like life cycle, one of the other modules that is out there, and be very aggressive in asking for use cases. Goes to the first point. Ask for more use cases. Can we do this now? Can we do that now? So then you just get more and more use cases instead of like spending a lot of time just building one use case into the system. It's much cheaper, way cheaper than like putting 6 developer to work for this.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, Omid. So this is fantastic. Let's dive into now building our own LLMs, right? The 5%, the unique 5%. So if I'm a company and I'm sitting on a treasure trove of data and unique data, and I want to build my own LLMs, the first biggest hurdle is cost, right? It's a significant investment. And the second hurdle is talent. You need to have the talent. So let's start with the first part, right? Cost. So if I'm from scratch today, if I'm beginning to build my own LLM, what should I benchmark, or what should I put aside as a sum of money that's going to cost me to do that? And how long would it cost me?
So GPT-3, I think the number is out there. GPT-3 cost $4 million to train, and that's significantly smaller than GPT-3.5 or GPT-4. So there is like a cost, and that's the cost of a couple of years ago. So it has changed. And then on the data side, you have to make sure the data is there. You have enough of it, and then you can start like your process. You have a chance of like kind of a start from another foundation model and fine tune your LLM on top of it. That can be done, and that can cost significantly less, and you may end up getting the results that you want to. But training LLMs from scratch is it's like it's one of those dark magics. It is easier than said than done. There are a lot of companies that are trying to kind of provide the infrastructure for this. There are companies that like give you even the task of like APIs to do that as well. But if you want to do it internally, that is distributed training. That is a lot of optimization, a specific type of engineers, a specific type of basically teams, and kind of team that like has expertise over a couple of different areas to make this happen. And as I said, like it's minimum cost, like the cost of GPT-3, for example, a scratch was $4 million. So that can change, of course, depending on how much data you have.
What did you say? 4 million or 4 billion?
4 million.
4 million. But this 4 million you're talking about, GPT-3. But after that, they did a lot of work on reinforcement learning to get it out to the point where ChatGPT came out. When you include all that, what are you really looking at as cost? That even that 4 million seems to be quite low. because I've heard this is you're looking at in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to train
Yeah.
models.
So that's two tasks. That's interesting that you're saying this. There are two different things, right? So GPT, that's GPT-3, as I said, like the older and smaller version. GPT-4, I think they say it costs $60 million to train it, right? And so GPT, there are two things. One is that they do this language model task, and the other one is that reinforcement learning, or some other companies do it with supervised training, is collection of those specific data. So they have collected a lot of data that cost them a lot of money to even build all this chat kind of interface, chat like experience, right? That costs a lot of money. Assuming that's not what you are going to do, and you're just using the basically LLMs directly for different tasks, not necessarily chat-based tasks or it's some sort of a classification task. You just looking into just finding your data and then find a base model and then start basically fine tuning from that. And then the base models that are out there are like 3 billion, 13 billion, uh, 40 billion, 60 billion parameters. And these are like changing the number of GPUs you want basically to train them. So it goes, you can train them with any number of GPU, it's just the time is going to be different. Like you can train on one GPU and like, I mean, one you can't, but like eight, A100, 80 gig, and then, but it will be like months to finish, so it costs a lot. So it's a long time, a lot of GPUs. We have to see how H100's capabilities directly. They're not like yet completely out for everyone. And then availability of GPU, like all of this you put together, it will cost like a with the team and expertise and everything. It will definitely cost some like a ballpark of like a couple of millions of dollars.
Got it. And so this Omid then is seems like there could be the sweet spot also of not leveraging existing LLMs nor building your own LLMs, but tapping into these open source models and starting with some base layer, but then building out the bulk of it from your own data set. Right? There's this
Yeah.
hybrid.
Yeah. So the hybrid model is very interesting because our company, for example, our technology is based on something called CRG, contextual retrieval generation. So what we do is like we use the basically the context you have, like the most of the data that you have, to kind of guide the LLM, uh, like our LLMs that are fine tuned in a specific way to kind of solve some tasks. And the way, for example, we are doing this makes us very domain agnostic. So we can go to like a lot of domains without having a specialized LLM, but use their data to achieve some of the tasks. But that's like again, like it's like especially that we have there's some version of it out there through like ChatGPT and other stuff that you can achieve some of the things that we, for example, we can do. But like that's another path that exists for you to kind of use different technologies that are there that like use LLMs, but they're not basically in need of like find like a kind of training your LLM from scratch. But again, even for those tasks, I think sometimes if you're in the 5%, you need your a specific LLM for very specific tasks that brings a lot of value to you. Then you have to go through this basically fine tuning of LLM. But I'm sure in very like in future, like we will see more specialized LLMs already coming out, like medical LLMs that you have to go purchase probably from some of the companies. I don't know the cost of that right now. Probably will be some sort of like very specific legal LLM that has been like trained on legal stuff. Some law firm probably like train it and sell it to you or something like that.
Excellent. I do think it sounds like the hybrid model could be an important model for a lot of companies here. So, Omid, a lot of amazing salient points you brought up on aspects that leaders need to consider when they are developing their AI strategy, especially with LLMs at the heart of your AI strategy. And I want to summarize some of the things we unpacked today. And please let me know if there are other things you want to add to this. It sounds like the first most important question you need to answer is what are the use cases you're going after with AI? And once you understand that, you can take a decision on deploying your own LLMs or leveraging LLMs that are existing. And today we covered a bunch of those topics on what they should consider in either of those decisions. And if you go down the path of deploying your own LLM, we spoke about what you need to do. We also spoke about if you were to leverage existing LLMs or open source models, key things to have in consideration, right? But in summary, some of the common denominators that came out were you have to be paying close attention to your data, you have to be paying close attention to the use cases, and you have to be paying close attention to the support system around you that you have that you can leverage, whether it's third party firms or tools and companies today that understand and specialize in this. Lots for our leaders to think about as they build out their AI strategy. Anything else you want to add, Omid, as closing words? And maybe you can also tell our audience a little bit about Vernique and what are you doing in Vernique?
Absolutely, the you had like the right kind of conclusion to our discussion. The only thing I wanted to augment is like if you're a leader, you're a product leader or a business leader in your company, just have an eye about like use cases, and believe me, the use cases can be places that you have never thought of. So Vernic is a company that is trying to build hyper localized, hyper personalized AI for different verticals, different companies. What it means that we bring all these kind of discussions we had today. We make sure that how we can deploy an AI solution in a specific domain that is very localized and very specialized with the data that you have, with whatever you have as like products you're selling, the uh, manuals that you have, like all of that, how to get those stuff and bring it to the user and put a natural language, voice and text interface in front of this for you to achieve those tasks and kind of interact with your data.
Fantastic, Omid. Um, Thank you for spending this time with us, Omid, and sharing all these insights. We wish you and the company the best, and we hope to see you soon in more podcasts.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Arvind, fascinating interview as always. Can you maybe highlight some of the key points for us?
Before I summarize what Omid said, I just want to take a minute to reflect on the fact that talking to someone who has actually had the experience of building AI products and services, building models, what a difference it made to the conversation, right? His knowledge was not just theoretical, but he's actually done this and done this over the last 5, 10 years. And so that experience clearly shows in the things he's told us. So let's kind of summarize the conversation with Omid today. When today, in the next 1 year, business leaders are going to be building a lot of AI products and services. And the decisions you make on the type of AI architecture that you're going to choose is going to have a lot of implications on the output of your business model. So let's talk about that and unpack that a little bit here. You have three options. You can either choose foundation models that exist and take them to market as is. You can fine tune on top of the foundation models, or you can build models ground up. And the interesting thing here for business leaders is that each of these decisions has an implication on cost, on how fast you go to market, and your competitive difference. So let's just cover those three really quickly. If you take existing foundation models and go to market with them, you're going to go to market faster and you're going to go to market cheaper, but you may not have a competitive advantage in the long run, right? Depending on your use case. If you take a foundation model and fine tune it, then you're still going to go to market faster and cheaper, not as fast as just using a foundation model directly, but you will develop a more competitive advantage because you're fine tuning that model on some unique data sets that you have. Now, for 95% of business leaders, these two situations are good enough for you to take AI products and services. But there are some businesses in the medical field and maybe in genetics or even in finance where you have so much data, you have such rich volumes of data, and you also have unique data that it may be worth it for you to consider building your own foundation model, which will give more accuracy, it will give more better performance, and more importantly, may even give you a competitive edge where that foundation models becomes the base of what the industry uses for those applications. So these are some important considerations for you. If that sounds intriguing, and if you skim past the podcast, go back and listen in depth, and you'll learn a lot more from what Omid has said.
So that's it for today. Thanks as always to Arvind Ravishankar.
Thanks, Stuart. Please promise me that if you buy the clock that recites poems, you will let me know.
I will let you know, and I will read you the poems minute by minute until we're both sick of it.
Oh man! I thought I'll make fun of you. Oh man, I don't want to listen to the poems.
I got one on you today. Okay. If you like our podcast, please like, subscribe, or tell your friends. I'm Stuart Black, and see you all next time.